What's up, LEGO builders? Welcome back to Coconut Brick Studios. Who doesn't love a classic showdown between armored tanks and towering mechs? Sci-fi worlds have dominated the entertainment industry for years now, where things like gravity or practicality can take a backseat to aesthetic, blue people, and giant guns. Today, I'm taking my first steps into the sci-fi future and building a city showdown of my own using a custom mech, an army of rogue peacekeeping droids, as well as a very overwhelmed policing force. So if you like big mechs and you cannot lie, don't forget to open fire on that like button, and let's get building. Now that I have you hooked, here's the truth about this video. It's a glorified practice run. I'm a Star Wars builder, have been pretty much my whole life. On top of that, I tend to do outdoor nature-based mocks, so most of my builds have a very specific rockwork-based aesthetic to them. But I've had a growing itch to start doing more urban-based builds. Cities with their geometric layouts, towering skyscrapers, and crowded roads and sidewalks have always been an intimidating prospect for me. The complexity of man-made structures, on top of the fact that scale and symmetry are very important, means I haven't done much city building outside of small stuff like this city of Megito mock. In nature, things can look however I want, and if there's an ugly patch, I can just cover it with grass. But if I build a skyscraper that's only 10 studs wide and has windows the size of a minifig head, it's just not going to look right, which is why scale is so important. I did build Coruscant in LEGO a couple years ago, but it was only a small chunk of the city and the buildings were few in number and basically micro scale. I want to tackle a full minifig compatible city this summer, so this video is going to be kind of like a trial run on how to build in an urban environment as I build a small section of a LEGO city. This will help me see what parts and techniques I need to bolster up. Getting some practice in a new style of building in a whole new environment is going to be a fun challenge though, and I have some really cool ideas in the works. And even though it's a city, I do want to include a little bit of plant life, so I'm adding some lavender colored trees. Still nature, but a little more sci-fi-esque. I'm a big fan of brutalist architecture, which is essentially minimalist designs with an emphasis on large structures comprised of simple materials and exposed structural elements instead of a more fancy, ornate design. Think lots of steel, rebar, and concrete. It's evolved over the years, but that simple yet impressive vibe it gives off never ceases to amaze me. I'm also really into futuristic cyberpunk cities like Blade Runner 2049 and Warhammer 40k. So the city I have in mind will be a blend of brutalist and cyberpunk designs. The bottom half of this building is all gray and pretty flat on the sides, so I built some sharply angled arch pieces to go on the outside to add some texture and detail. This probably looks like a pretty simple build so far, but remember, this is just a practice run for someone who's only just getting into a new style of building. Look at Palpatine. It took him 2 Death Stars to get the design right, and even then it still had flaws. Well, one big flaw. Once the arches are in, all that's left is to tile off any exposed studs, smoothing out the foundation. I'm thinking this is going to be some kind of small generic office building for a bank, which will sit in the financial district of my city. Let me know in the comments if you have any ideas for what building I should make next. The bottom half of the almost skyscraper is in place, but the other and arguably more important half is what'll make or break the design. As a beginner level builder, when it comes to modern looking skyscrapers, I didn't want to try creating something crazy that looks like it was from Tron City. Instead, I started simple with a pretty generic looking skyscraper made up of stacked floors of windows. But there's a twist. Covering the weird flat gray sections on the sides are these large roundish designs. The purpose behind them is to make the building look more futuristic, which honestly I'm learning is kind of easy. Just make something that looks similar to what we have now, but is a little bit more weird and more round, and boom, welcome to the future. I built a small walled off area for a couple of AC units. Next to that is an access hatch for getting up onto the roof, and the last addition is a tower topped with some antenna and satellite dishes. I'm really liking how this building looks, and I think it's going to mesh with the bottom half really well. I've been teasing a human/mech showdown, and it's time to deliver. I've had this APC or armored personnel carrier prototype sitting around for months, and I think it'll be the perfect opponent for the mech. I want this to be big enough to actually hold minifigs, so I'm starting with a wide base of plates. I want this to look like a tank on wheels, so I'm really beefing up the sides with slope and plate to create some large wheel wells and armored walls. This is going to be like a SWAT or local law enforcement vehicle, so I'm going to try out a blue, gray, and white color scheme. When building vehicles, my favorite part is getting to design and add small, seemingly unimportant stuff like brake lights, door handles, and bumpers. Things that often fly under the radar, but I found the more stuff like that you can add, the better your vehicle's gonna look. It doesn't even have to look like it's from our world, just as long as it looks like it's serving a function of some kind to your ship or vehicle. At this point, you might be thinking an APC and some beefed up police force aren't enough to go up against military grade mechs and droids, and you would be correct. I'm in the process of crafting an entire lore and backstory for a fictional world populated by massive hive cities. In the last video and over the next couple of videos, I'm teasing little glimpses into what's going on. Right now, we're seeing the early events right after a robotic peacekeeping force has gone off the rails, taking over large portions of a hive city. I have much more mech-capable weapons and vehicles on the way. The humans just need to survive until they arrive. The front is probably the toughest part to design. Most APCs have pretty wide, basic bodies, but the fronts are a mess of angles, curves, and tiny windshields. I finally came up with this design that honestly looks like the head of a pig, but that's not a bad creature to base a heavily armored vehicle off of, so I'm just gonna roll with it. I'm using the raised 1x2 bars to create a small windshield which will be stronger and harder to hit. This chunk fits smoothly in with the front of the body, and now I can add the rear door and roof. I've only had my solid gray prototype to look at so far, so I'm loving this new paint job. The sides of the APC are still lacking, so I added some more slopes and inverted cheese slopes to form wheel wells that will help the tires not stick out as far. And I still need a name for this vehicle, so drop any suggestions below in the comments. I went with black and dark blue tires to match the vibe, and this thing is almost ready for aggressive negotiations. It just needs some weapons and accessories. You can never go wrong with a light bar for late nights, and after that I built a small turret and mounted it on the roof, packed to the gills with various types of grenades and a double box-fed 50 cal machine gun. To further protect the sides, I added railings to shield against RPG and drone attacks. The railings also provide an excellent spot for sorting extra gear, ammo boxes, or whatever else is needed for a mission. With the APC done, I can add it and the figs trembling behind their concrete barriers to the rock. I think one of the coolest parts of this video is hands down my custom mech. If you want to see how this bad boy came together, check out my SCI-FI Mech challenge, which I'll link at the top of this video. That's the last piece of the puzzle. Now it's time to assemble everything and see what I cooked up. Patrolling a city that's divided by war means you never know what's lurking in the shadows, and today it's more than your typical scouting party. A SWAT team arrives at the financial district after getting a disturbance call and immediately wishes they had brought something bigger. The grenades and 50 cal machine gun on their APC can handle most situations, but emerging out of the smoke and gloom is an MC-16 Reaper mech armed with twin heavy blasters and thick frontal armor. Swarming around its feet are peacekeeping sentinel droids that suddenly went rogue about a month ago, sending this city into absolute chaos. Luckily, one guy made it to the roof and got a kill shot on the mech before its missile defense systems could intervene, igniting the cockpit in an explosion of fire and debris. The remote-controlled 50 cal cleans up the remaining sentinels, while what's left of the squad huddle in the back of the APC, wishing they had stuck with that political science degree in school. Turns out writing the little story at the end was harder than building the entire mock. I'm so used to writing in the Star Wars galaxy, where most of the world building and character work is done for me, but I'm working from scratch here in this new world, so I think on top of practicing new architecture designs, I need to sit down and hammer out the world building and backstory for this new city. It was a great practice video though. I'm very happy with how the building turned out. It's big enough to look like it can hold minifigs, but doesn't take up a ton of room. It's not even close to minifig scale, but that's okay. I would put it in the minifig compatible category. The biggest takeaway from this mock though was the need for background builds to fill up empty space. With nature mocks, I can just throw in some trees, rock features, or a river, but a city has a different landscape. I need to start including things like small restaurants, lampposts, manhole covers, or fire hydrants. Real world stuff that's not always super flashy, but keeps a city going. But that's what these types of videos are for, and I'm feeling more prepared to start my new city. I'm really excited for the next video taking place in this world because I'll finally get to introduce you to the HADF and their anti-mech tanks and weapons. They might not be as big, but they still pack quite a punch. Don't forget to let me know what you think of this mock in the comments, and until next time, happy building.